Hey everyone, and welcome to Lab. Today we're going to talk about the two types of creatives. Now, there are certainly more than just two types of creatives, but these are the two types of creatives that Luke and I embody, and they're very different, but very necessary in a creative workspace.
Yeah, and one of the chief things that we want to get across here is even though we are different, we have pretty significant differences in our approaches to projects and the particularities within them. We have a common goal. We really want the highest quality product to deliver at the end of the process. So that's where we're coming from here.
And our goal in talking about this too is to kind of reach you guys where you're at. I think a lot of times at least when I was getting started, I would look at other creatives and other producers and think, I don't do it like them. Am I doing it wrong? And I do think there are some things that are wrong in this industry. And I think there are good practices and bad habits. But the way you fundamentally approach creativity is not wrong. It's very you. And so it's our hope that as we talk about this, you can kind of resonate with one of us, or maybe bits of both of us, and think, oh good, I'm not crazy for doing it this way. Here's how you can work with that and work with the inherent faults of that type to produce good work.
And it's important that you realize that you in yourself, in your own creative approach, and the unique skill set that you have and the propensities that you have, just the way you look at things, the way you see things, the way things jump out at you and say, oh, this is a great way to do this, that's okay. And you want to delve into that. You want to develop those things. What we want to do is help you to understand how you may experience others in the industry and how you may relate to certain things that you need to do.
I think where a lot of this comes from, at least the passion for us to talk about this, is the types of jobs that Luke and I each held in the industry, because they're very different. In most of my jobs, was always the lone video producer on a team of other types of creatives, like graphic designers or creative directors. But I was responsible for every aspect of video production.
And I work on a team of people and have for most of my career. So I come in at certain points during the entire production and post-production process. I'm primarily focused in the post-production realm. So when something comes in from the field that's been shot, I will jump in and do all the media management and preparation for the post-production process. And then it'll be handed off to an editor who will basically do a rough cut in the timeline, and then we'll start bouncing back and forth where I'm coming in and doing sound design, music composition, arrangement, editing, dialogue editing. And then towards the end of the process, I will again become involved when it comes down to distribution. We're talking about national television distribution, film festivals, online streaming, social media formats. So those are kind of the three entries I have into that process. And during that time, we're bouncing back and forth between a graphic artist, an editor, producer, director, research people. So everyone has to work together, and I'm usually on a team of 6 to 8 people, kind of depends on the level of the production, but we all have to relate to each other. We all have to speak the same language. We all have to take the same organizational approach so that we can effectively converse about wherever we are in a project and particularities that are associated with that. If you don't have that commonality, confusion sets in, and you start to waste time, and we all know what wasted time is, right? It's wasted money. So I like predictability, I like structure, I like extremely concise, precise organization. So it's a little bit different than what Alan has dealt with, but in my situation, that's what's necessary.
And for me, that creative collaboration with the people that are on my team, while they weren't producers, was still necessary. A lot of what I did was on an advertising team. And so what the graphic designer and photographer were doing with the print ads or the web ads was what I had to mirror and kind of spin off with in the video creative. And so that collaboration was still necessary, but I was the only person from start to finish who was working with the video content, which means Luke's need to have a set structure so the other producers on the team could understand and hand off and work with, that was never a concern for me. So I actually adopted what Luke would consider a sloppy or lazy approach to file management and structure, because as long as it made sense to me, it was fine. And a lot of the jobs you guys get may have you pegged as just the lone video creative. But through my time in the industry, I've understood now the importance of file structure, the importance of organization. But if you look at my layer panel in Photoshop, it's kind of like the Wild West. And I'll usually go and rename things only after I've gotten frustrated like 50 times.
That's interesting, because I was just in one of your Photoshop projects yesterday, and that's exactly the term that occurred to me, Wild West. Layer 6, layer 42, untitled.
And those of you that came from my 110 class, this is like, I'm revealing the curtain, right? Because I taught you guys, name your layers. I'll dock you points if you don't. I may or may not name all my layers. But so you can kind of see, Luke is more of that type A organized creative. I am more of the, just give me a camera, let's go figure it out and let creativity happen on the spot. Both have their perks. But notice how it also branches us off into Luke has a specialty. I would say my specialty is behind the camera, but I wouldn't look at the production process and think, ooh, right there, that's what I'm really good at. And for you, that'd be audio.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a great point. I do have a specialty, and everybody on the team that I work with has a specialty as well. So we're kind of responsible for our different areas of superpowers, I guess I would call them. But we all have to be able to hand things back and forth constantly, because we kind of take a modular approach. We work primarily in documentary, although we do promotional and branding and stuff like that too. But in long-form documentary, we're constantly working in different sections of a film. And as those become reviewable by the producer, director, or whatever client we may be dealing with, we need to be sort of finishing them off and handing them back and forth between each other, so that all of the componentry that's necessary to make that a finished thing is present when we go to review for revisions. So it is extremely important that we be able to do that in a very efficient manner, and that's where having that common organization, that common language, that is a huge part of it. What do you call stuff? How do you refer to things? How do you, elicit feedback from people? So
Sequence 1.
Yeah, don't ever do that, please. All of that is extremely important in making that process efficient, because when you're working on something that may take a year to finish once you get into post, wasting time can add up over time to weeks of unnecessary work, just because you didn't have things laid out properly to begin with.
And the bulk of this conversation actually came from Luke and I both being at the Adobe conference a few years back, and sitting down at a table in between sessions and really talking about our ideological mindsets on how creativity happens. And we got into, I don't know if you call it a heated conversation,
No.
but it was very passionate.
It was passionate.
Luke and I
yes.
are both Italians. We both talk with our hands. We both get very passionate about things. So we really started to discuss, well, does creativity happen when you give students structure, or does it happen when you just let them figure things out for themselves? And I think the answer is yes, depending on the type of creative that you are. And so for some of you guys, you may feel that you just want to be handed a camera and to go out and to make mistakes and to figure things out. For some of you, you may be like, well, just give me the checklist. Give me exactly what I have to do step by step so I can accomplish that and learn by doing. I wouldn't say either is wrong. I think my approach is better.
Oh yeah, of course you do. But I'll tell you right now, there are many benefits to mine, absolutely. One of the analogies I always use in class is having a palette of paints. And you're creating your masterpiece here, and you don't want to be limited by searching for a certain color or trying to find what it is that you need to make that perfect stroke at that time. So having all of that set in a structured, organized way that you don't even have to think about. So you can take what's here and just put it out without having to think about how to do that If you can take that step out, you're just freely creating. That's
Yeah,
how
but
I approach it.
But what if in your disorganization, two colors mixed that you would not have previously seen, and you made a new color that was exactly what you needed to have?
That is possible, absolutely. Amongst all the other mess, that could happen.
We don't hate each other, I promise.
No.
And actually working together in this lab has really been a fun process for the two of us, because we've gotten to approach production and even the editing process of these videos in each other's ways. I've adopted Luke's file structure, mostly because it makes him happy. But it's also good for you guys to understand. So your file structure, you all are learning in both of our classes, is identical. And that's important for us, because the more students can have a cohesive file structure, the more I firmly believe successful they'll be as they move on. But you have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. And that is something that I feel that my creative approach helps with. If you walk in on something and it's like, this is not what I expected it to be, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the gear, whether it's the talent, you have to be able to pivot quickly. And if you adhere too quickly to your checklist, you could cause panic in yourself, because you're like, oh no, this isn't how I planned it. What do I do? And there's a fluidity in what happens in production, especially when you're overseeing the entirety of production, that you have to expect the unexpected and make something work and make it cool and make it professional with those wrenches thrown in there.
Yeah, adaptation is one of the key components for a creative to have. If you can look at a situation, and quite often, maybe you're working with people that do things differently than you have in the past. Something goes wrong on set. You don't have a piece of gear that you thought you would, so you have to, cobble together something else to make it work. Or in post-production, maybe you thought you had the perfect idea of how to, show this product or this scene, or connect the audience to this character, and then the producer or the director comes in and said, no, that's all wrong. That's not at all what I wanted. And you have to change quickly. You have to adapt to that situation. And the more readily that you can do that, the lower your stress level will be, the more able you will be to think creatively through that situation and navigate that labyrinth to get yourself through to that end result in a much more efficient way. So you can't be too rigid, and that's one of the things that I've picked up from Alan and from other people that I've worked with recently. You have to let go of some of that. So he's adopted my file structure, and I've become a bit more loose when it comes to how to actually execute the creative ideas that I have.
And when working together, it's important to understand that you're not going to work with people who always think the same way as you. That's kind of what Luke was alluding to. And you have to understand that you have things that you're good at, and you're going to have things that you are not good at. And even though if you're on a team where you're the lone video producer and you have to pretend you're good at everything, there are still those things that you're weak in. And surround yourself with people, like I have with Luke, who are better at things than you and who think differently than you, so you can learn and watch and grow in those areas of weakness. For me, a lot of that was audio and lighting. And throughout my career, I would watch people on teams who were better at audio and lighting than me and start to adopt principles that they would do. The creative ego is real, right? I firmly believe the creative ego is what allows us to put something online and say, hello world, this is good enough for you to watch. But the creative ego can also get in our way in working collaboratively. When someone comes in and says, I actually do that different and I think it's better, your first reaction is to get all defensive and the claws come out. And that's the part of the ego you have to tamp down.
Yeah, you have to, in many situations when you're working with other people that do have a strong skill set, maybe in an area that you don't, you have to realize that's an asset to you. You are surrounded by different strengths, and in a couple of ways, it can benefit you. Number one, maybe during that production, it can be better achieved by this other person. In less time, it'll look better in the end, the client will be more happy. And while that's happening, like Alan was saying, you can absorb that information. You can see how they do what they do. Ask them questions. People love it when you come up to them and say, oh my gosh, what you're doing is awesome. I would love to learn how to do that too. Can you show me your process? They'll take that as a huge compliment, and you should take that as a compliment when people ask you that. And don't withhold that information. Share it. Everybody benefits when that happens. That is so important to a creative team, and it is, as I said before, it is incredibly important to the end result. That's the ultimate goal, and that's kind of bringing back full circle what we're talking about here. We're both working from slightly different approaches toward a common goal, the best end result possible.
So as we embark on our first discussion, we want to hear from you guys which style you most relate to and why. Or maybe you don't relate to either of us and you have a completely third creative type that we have completely missed.
That could happen.
Which means you should come sit right in between us and navigate.
Exactly.
So we look forward to joining you guys in that discussion and just helping you to rethink and understand and have confidence in your personality as it relates to the creative process.
So as you approach the discussion forum, draw upon experiences that you've had, maybe tie them to things that we have mentioned, or as Alan said, enlighten us with things that we haven't discussed. If there's one constant in the creative industry, there's always something different. There's always something new. It's always evolving in some way. And we'd love to hear from you about things that we haven't discussed that you have experienced. So please let us know.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next lab.
Bye, guys.